Welcome to Reina Teachings. My name is Lori Camacho, and I am the Trance Channel to a being named Reina. Together, we speak about many different spiritual topics. Sometimes I channel them in trance with her, and sometimes I speak about it myself, which is what I will be doing tonight. Before we get started, if you want to like and subscribe below, I would love it. That helps me to continue to make more videos for you. Also, if you have a suggestion of a video that you would like to hear about, a particular subject, you can just pop it below into the comments and I'll get it and it will show up in a future video. Lastly, hit the bell if you want to be notified of those videos. We put up a new video about once a week. Every Monday is when we put up a new video. Okay, so to get started for tonight, I wanted to speak about the spiritual awakening. What is the spiritual awakening, and also how to navigate the spiritual awakening, as well as how to know if you are having a spiritual awakening. I speak a lot from my own experiences because everything I talked about I have been through, by the way, in my own spiritual awakening process with Reina. So some of these symptoms and things that I may speak about, you may be having or you may not. So everybody is different when it comes to their spiritual awakening as well. So know that if I don't list something, it's not because it isn't a part of it. I just may not have heard of it before. I have also assisted many people through their spiritual awakening, so I may be including some of those things that I've also worked with quite a bit when it comes to other people. So first of all, what is a spiritual awakening? The first thing I want to say that it is not a Kundalini awakening. That is a different thing. So I will make a video about Kundalini awakenings as well at another time. But you may have a spiritual awakening and not be having a Kundalini awakening. So I just wanted to make that very clear right off the bat. A spiritual awakening is when your soul really comes knocking. Your soul, your spirit, and also your higher self really come knocking on that inner door in there saying, hello, we are here. So you may start having experiences that you've not had before. So that constitutes a spiritual awakening. You may begin having spiritual experiences such as astral projection, precognitive dreams, as well as psychic phenomena. The psychic phenomena is something that can show up first, and that is how you know that you are having a spiritual awakening, because prior to this, you might not have had psychic things, or maybe you haven't in a long time. That is another thing that happens. Some people go through remembering that they got a lot of psychic things or saw spirits as a child, but they haven't had that happen in a long time, and now all of a sudden it's happening again. And you're having this remembrance process of, oh yeah, that's right, when I was a child, I used to have some of these experiences, and maybe I brushed them off as not even real or something that a child imagines, and now it's happening to me again. So that was very much my experience as well. Another part of the spiritual awakening is depression can be a part of the spiritual awakening, believe it or not. Not that I want to make this video negative, because it's not, but I don't want to leave things out. So I noticed that some people talk about the dark side of spiritual awakening. I don't really look at it as a dark side. I look at it as a whole, basically. So we have some positive symptoms, and we have some symptoms that maybe are not so positive, but they are very necessary. So depression can be a part of a spiritual awakening because your healing begins to wake up within you. So you may start remembering or thinking about past events from your childhood or your adolescence that either you've not thought about in a long time, or you actually forgot, and you can't believe you're remembering them all of a sudden. And so this can bring up depression in a person initially. So I know for myself, I had the depression and I wasn't sure why I felt that way. I wanted to sleep all the time, but I wanted to be up all night long. So that is another symptom of spiritual awakening. If you find yourself awake all night long, but very tired all day long, that depression is very indicative of that spiritual awakening, because the healing is just trying to pop up under the surface, but it hasn't quite done it yet. So as the healing starts to pop up, the depression can get a little bit more intense, or you may all of a sudden feel the need to seek out help. I remember having to decide between, do I want to see a psychologist, or do I want to see some type of healer or spiritual person that can help me? And I ended up settling on a medium, and I'm really glad that I did that, because my spiritual awakening happened to be coupled with a Kundalini awakening. And some of the things that I was experiencing, I don't think a psychologist really could have helped me with. Again, if I do this Kundalini awakening video before I put this one out, I will link it in the description below so that you can go to that video next if you think you might also be having a Kundalini awakening. Another symptom of spiritual awakening is you find yourself around other spiritual people or other psychic people randomly, in the most random places. I remember getting my windows tinted, and the man that came to tint my windows started talking to me about channeling. Of all things, channeling. Channeling is not always something that is, talked about in metaphysics even. It comes up at a certain point, but usually people are more concerned with like the psychic phenomena or, mediumship or some of these other things. So it was very strange that I had this person that was here to tint my windows was all of a sudden talking to me about channeling. So you start to notice that there are other people that are either also interested in spirituality, or they happen to also be going through their awakening. So it's kind of like that saying, look around and see what club you're in. You may find that you are in the club of spiritual awakening. Another symptom and phase of the spiritual awakening process is just to become very sensitive, both emotionally and energetically. And what I mean by energetically is you may find it hard to be around certain types of people. They may feel harsh to you, or you may find it difficult to be around big groups of people. So because you're very energetically sensitive, it will feel as if you have these little neurons that are sticking out of your field that are really, really sensitive to the touch. And if there's too many people around you, you'll feel as if you're going to short out or something. So you may even get a little bit of anxiety. So anxiety can also be a symptom of spiritual awakening. And so if you find that this happens when you're in big groups of people, you may just want to, while you're going through this part of it anyway, it does change, I can promise you that. You may want to just limit the amount of people that you are around. And what I mean by it will change, eventually you'll learn to manage your own energetic sensitivity, and you'll be able to be around people and maybe even more people at a certain point. But until you learn that, it can be a lot to deal with. Another symptom would be intense dreaming. And I really encourage you, if you are having this intense dreaming, to write down your dreams. So writing down your dreams can be hugely helpful in the spiritual awakening process, because you can see what's happening. So your spirit guides and your higher self are going to talk to you through your dreams, and they're going to try to assist you and help you with what you're going through. So intense dreaming is another symptom of spiritual awakening. Now, this next one you'll hear me talk about a lot in other videos, and also Reina as well brings this up, is the ego. So your ego is a necessary part of your life and being a human being. But your ego will get in the way when you are going through a spiritual awakening. So you may have some really high ups and downs emotionally that are due to the ego trying to trip you up. So, and I'm going to give you an example in a minute. Another phase of spiritual awakening can be almost this euphoria of, wow, I figured out this really amazing thing and everybody needs to know about it. But sometimes you need to just take a break, calm down, and not everyone needs to know about it. So you'll have that feeling partially because this is a new thing and you're really excited about it and you're having so many changes. But sometimes your ego can come in and make you think that you need to all of a sudden enlighten the world. This is a very common symptom of newly awakening people. And it can a little bit make your friends and family think that you're a little crazy. So my suggestion with that is only, trust people that will be supportive of your process. And maybe don't feel like you have to tell the entire world about your spiritual awakening right away. That symptom will kind of come and go. I also happen to own 2 metaphysical bookstores with my husband, and we regularly get emails from people that are in this phase of their spiritual awakening. And we'll get these long emails about, their mission and how we need to help them carry out their mission. And they just happen to be in this ego phase of their spiritual awakening. So it's something that is very normal. It happens to a lot of people. So that's why I'm talking about it as being one of the phases of a spiritual awakening. But just wait and, let yourself have your process. We tend to want to jump in and help other people a little bit too soon too when we're going through the spiritual awakening. So just help yourself right now and let that mission be your own mission. Another phase, and that phase can last sometimes for years. I've seen people get stuck in it a little bit too. So as you learn and you really go through your development process, you'll figure out that sometimes that's just the ego being a little overzealous with the process. Another symptom of the spiritual awakening can be also this goes a little bit with the depression part of it, but just some intense emotional pain, crying, not knowing why you feel the way that you feel yet. And your body is, as well as your soul and your psyche, is trying to release repressed emotion so that you can open up and really grow with this. So if you find yourself a little weepy and teary a lot, let yourself cry. Meditation really helps you with this. When you breathe deeply and you meditate, that phase of spiritual awakening can pass more easily if you just really allow yourself to have it. So I know some people will really try and resist their emotion and try not to have it. That's not what you want to do with this. You really want to allow it to come forward because that's part of your growth. And sometimes you'll have visions or you'll remember certain things about your life, and it's really your higher self trying to help you to heal. So that's another symptom of spiritual awakening. Another fun one. So some people go through their spiritual awakening because they want to, because they chose to. They said, you know what, this is an interesting subject for me, and I think I'm going to take an intuitive class and see what I can do. Why not? I've had a lot of people like that come into my class, and that can be a phase of the spiritual awakening process. Some people don't come to this because they're depressed or in pain or they're having some of the other spiritual awakening experiences. They just wanted to have the experience, and that is just as valid. You are going through a spiritual awakening if you wake up one day and you decide an intuitive class might be a good thing for you to do, or a meditation class. And then there's like a happy phase that goes along with that. I've found people sometimes in that phase in class, they may feel like, well, I don't know if I really have this gift, or I don't know if I need to even really be doing this, but I just kind of wanted to. Absolutely, you should be. If you're in that phase, that really can be a fun one, and I think a nicer opening to the spiritual awakening as well. So that is another phase and symptom of spiritual awakening. If you're deciding that you just want to do this, you just want to develop yourself on a spiritual level. Okay, another one. So Life events. We have a lot of different life events. A lot of times I find that when someone loses a person close to them, that can throw them into a spiritual awakening that they really were not planning on otherwise. I will say the very first spiritual awakening that I had, I was only 9 years old because my father died. And I actually saw him in my bedroom. So it thrusted me into this spiritual awakening that I would not have otherwise had as a 9-year-old girl. So that is another, that could be another symptom of spiritual awakening. If you have lost someone recently that was close to you, that can trigger the spiritual awakening to begin, definitely. Some of these phases as well. So I'm talking about events that happen. I'm also talking about some phases and things that you go through in the spiritual awakening process. Some of them go on for years. Some of them go on for months. There's no predetermined time. And so one of the things that, this is another phase and symptom that occurs with spiritual awakening, is wanting to hurry up the process, thinking that like, oh, well, I'm going to go take this class and in a weekend, I'm going to be an enlightened person. That is another phase. I think we all would like to snap our fingers and have things happen quickly, but spirituality is most definitely not one of those things that can happen with. And I think most things that are important in life do not happen that way either. But I want to stress that. So you can go take lots of different classes and workshops, and I encourage you to do that. But you're not going to become enlightened in a short amount of time. It's going to be over a lifetime. So at this point, so I mentioned my first spiritual awakening happened at 9 years old. I'm now 44 years old, and I am still I'm going through another spiritual awakening as we speak right now. So you will go through plateaus in your life, but this really is a lifetime process. It gets easier, you gain more knowledge, you get more skill with your meditative process and learning how to navigate it and heal yourself and really be in it, enjoy being in it. But it's not something that you want to, it's not something you can rush. So this is, a universal thing that we come into the earth to experience. And once it's happening and we are experiencing it, you want to just really, allow yourself to go along for the ride and not feel like you have to have an end. So I do notice sometimes people want that end. Okay, well, I'm going to take this class and then I'll be enlightened, or then I'll be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it just really doesn't happen that way. So another symptom of spiritual awakening is quitting your job and finding purpose. I love this one. Some people have a career purpose with their spirituality as well. Some people don't. But I find that the spiritual awakening process does throw you onto that path no matter what it is. So if you find that all of a sudden you are not happy in your career, sometimes the career change itself can also trigger the spiritual awakening. But 9 times out of 10, once you're on the spiritual awakening, if you haven't had a career change, you probably are going to. So this is another phase and symptom of the spiritual awakening. It's okay if you don't know what that purpose is yet. I didn't really know what my purpose was for a long time. I even knew that I was psychic. I knew that I was able to kind of communicate with spirits and things like that, but it was years before I knew I was going to be a trance channel. So I did go through, I did become a clairvoyant very early in my life. I was only 26, and at the time I was bartending, and that was a fascinating process. I'm grateful that I got to do that because I got to talk to a lot of people, and I even had spiritual experiences while I was doing that job. I was bartending, and then I also waitressed a lot when I was younger. And I did my first reading when I was 26 years old. It was still about 4 years of me doing readings and learning and going to classes and things like that before I did this full time. But it was clear to me that I was definitely going to have a purpose in the spirituality as well. And so what I want to stress is that having the notion to change your career, quit your job, there's probably going to be a process in that. And I do notice that sometimes people want to quit their job right away. Okay, I'm ready. Well, you got to go through a process. So even though you're ready, spirit might not be ready, and you may not get it revealed to you yet what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And also, don't assume that your purpose in the world is necessarily going to be with spirituality itself. It may, mine happen to be, but it also may not be. Remain open to your purpose being really anything that is of service. So we are here to be of service, and anyone who goes through a spiritual awakening will also be on that path in some way. So a career change, wanting to quit your job and find purpose is another phase and symptom of the spiritual awakening process. Another thing I want to mention is the spiritual awakening doesn't happen all at once. So it will ebb and flow through your life. So I notice for myself anyway, I will go through a spiritual awakening sometimes for a few years where it's kind of intense for me. And then I'll plateau for a while. And I'll just kind of be, doing my work and in my life and not feeling like a lot is changing because I'm really integrating the awakening that I went through. And I would have to count how many awakenings. I've been through many of them now. And I've been in one for about 3 years now that has been a little bit more intense. And I think I'm coming to the ending of this particular one soon. I can kind of tell when that's happening now in my life. But I understand that it's probably not my last one. And as we go through different changes in our life, and especially we go through different ages, you will go through different types of spiritual awakenings. So in my 20s, there's something called the Saturn return, and I went through that between 26 and 30. It's usually between 27 and 30. And that was really the opening of my purpose and my gift and what I was supposed to do with the world. And then I plateaued for a little while, and then I went through getting married and having children. And I had another spiritual awakening that allowed me to have my beautiful son and my 2 stepdaughters that I have. So know that the phase of life you are in is as important as the spiritual awakening that you're in, and they most likely are going to be, they go together, those two things, for sure. I will talk about just one more thing with the spiritual awakening, how to know that you're in your spiritual awakening. You can feel it. There is this sort of in-between kind of feeling that you have when you're in a spiritual awakening, where you can feel almost like you're not exactly part of the rest of the consensus reality. You may go days sometimes feeling that way, or even, I remember I forgot to pay my bills once for 3 days straight, and then I realized, oh no, like I have rent to pay and things like that. I just kind of wasn't, I wasn't grounded with it yet. I wasn't on this plane for a few days. That can happen. And then you will go through a grounded period with your spiritual awakening as well. So I went through lots of ungrounded things with my spiritual awakening. And right now I'm actually in a much more grounded place with my spiritual awakening process, even though I'm in another one. I don't feel like I don't feel super sensitive around lots of people. I still am affected by a lot of people. I am one of those people that just does better with less energy around me, but I can do it. I can do it, and I don't feel like I'm going to have a massive anxiety attack and I have to go outside anymore, which is what happened to me at one time. Another part of being grounded in your spiritual awakening is you're able to talk to anyone. So at first I had a really hard time talking to other people that were not having the same experience as me. So other people that were not going through a spiritual awakening, or they had a different spiritual perspective, like maybe they were part of a religion or something like that. I had a really hard time with it, and it was just better for me not to talk to them. Once you integrate your spirituality, especially in metaphysics, I look at it as a more natural kind of melting pot of many different perspectives, really. I can talk to anyone now. I can talk to someone who is very Christian. I can talk to someone who's very Catholic or very Jewish. It doesn't matter. I can find something in common between myself and them. And that shows you that you are in a more grounded place with your spirituality. So that is the last one that I'm going to speak about. If there's any questions or comments or anything you would like to know about your own spiritual awakening that may show up in a future video that would benefit many other people, go ahead and pop it in the comments below. The last thing I'll say is Raina and I have channeled a program called the Sage Spiritual Foundation Program for the past 14 years. I've done it mostly in person, but I do have it online. It is part of our membership, and you can also just purchase it on its own if you want to. And I will also link that in the description box below if you are interested in something that can help you through this spiritual awakening. So another video that I made recently, I made another video in trance with Raina that talked about the spiritual awakening as well in a different way. I will also link that in the description box if you want to watch another video. All right, have a good night.